Hello, I'm Barry McCormick. Welcome to the BastilleBSD video series. Today I'm going to do a getting started with Bastille. I'm going to go through setting up Bastille from scratch, all the way through creating a few jails. If you look here, I have our website up, BastilleBSD.org. If you look on the main page here, there's a Bastille documentation link, which takes you to the documentation. We have very extensive documentation. Here's the table of contents of the documentation. You'll notice here this latest tag. If I click on that, you can see here's all the versions, some of the documentation at the old versions. I'm on the latest. We have the documentation set up to where if we edit the documentation, as soon as we commit that edit, it's automatically built and uploaded to the website. So if you follow the link from the website to the latest, you will have the latest documentation. The other thing I have here is I have a VM. I'm running a Beehive VM. I just built this VM just now. It's a clean VM. You look at the history, the only things that I've done since I built it, I did a package install NeoVim and Get. I did an ifconfig to check and make sure the VM's interfaces are correct. I did a FreeBSD update fetch and a FreeBSD update install to patch it to the latest version. I run FreeBSD version and 14.2-release P3. I type Bastille, it's not found, it's not installed. I do package info, and here's the only packages that are installed. So there's not much installed, a clean, fresh install. Okay, let's go back over to the documentation. If we go into the installation, you can install it from package. Do package install Bastille, and it will get you version 0.13 from the packages. You can go into the ports and do make. Here's the command to make it from the ports. Or you can install from Get and get the latest code. I'm going to do the install from Get because I want to get the latest code. I will be using version 0.14, which is our latest version, which will be released later, probably next week. So I'm using the code that's not even released to the public yet. So I said, so technically it is because I'm getting it right here. All it's doing is cloning, and there it is, it cloned. Bastille is written all in shell scripting, so it's just a bunch of shell scripts. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. Now you see we have this Bastille directory. I change into this Bastille directory. I type make install. Notice what the install actually is. It's nothing more than copying all of these shell scripts into the right locations. Again, you notice they're all .sh are all just shell scripts. Now then, I need to type Bastille setup. Yes, I want it to create a configuration file. Now if I do ifconfig, you see a Bastille 0 here. It created a Bastille loopback interface. Now, I'm running ZFS. Do a zpool list. My zpool's name is zroot. You type zpool list as root, it'll show you what your zpool's name is. Mine's the default zroot, so I need to go edit user local etc Bastille Bastille.conf file. If you're running ZFS, you need to edit 2 lines in this file. You come down here to the ZFS options. Get this up a little bit. The default is ZFS no. So if you're running UFS, you leave this to know, and an empty ZFS pool, and everything is good. If you're running ZFS, if you don't set this, you will get some weird errors when you try to create and destroy jails. So I make mine yes and zroot. Leave everything else the same. There's a copy of what this default file looks like in the documentation. So you can go to the documentation. Here in the configuration file, here's the default file and all, and some notes about it. So you can go read up on and look at what all these lines are. Okay, so now we've installed this. We've run Bastille setup. We've edited this. Now let's do a Bastille version, see what it says. It should give me a hexadecimal number, which it does. If you install from packages and run that command, you'll get 0.13 dashed in a date stamp. Since I'm installing from Get, it doesn't have a released version, so it'll give you a hexadecimal number for the version. So, if I type Bastille without any thing and just hit enter, Bastille will give you enter. It gives you a list of all the available commands. Here's all the commands that Bastille understands. Okay, you saw Bastille version. The next thing we need to do is we need to bootstrap the system. Bootstrapping a system is Bastille, bootstrap, and then a release. Let me get this started bootstrapping, and we'll talk about what this means. So now it's bootstrapping. Now, how did I know to put 14.2-release there? If you go to the FreeBSD website, you go download FreeBSD, you go down here under what the releases are, production quality, it talks about releases. 14.2 release, there's exactly what I put in. The other valid values are 13.5-release, 13.4 release. Those are the ones that are currently able to be downloaded as releases. Now, if I go back to the documentation and I go into the documentation on Bootstrap, this shows you can bootstrap and have multiple FreeBSD releases bootstrapped and ready to build jails from. So as it is now, I can have 14.2, 13.5, and 13.4 all bootstrapped. If for some reason I need an older version of FreeBSD, this end-of-life releases, it shows you how to export the Bastille URL for FreeBSD to this FTP site, and then you can bootstrap older releases. This way, if for some reason you absolutely need an 11.2 release or you need a 12.2 release, you can get them. The only caveat is that the version of your host system, any jails must be equal to or older than your host system. I'm running 14.2 patched to the latest, so I can run 14.2, any 13 jails, any 14.0 jails, anything older than 14.2 or 14.2 I can run as a jail. Bootstrap subcommand is generally only used once to prepare the system. The other use case is when there's a new FreeBSD version. So I'm bootstrapping 14.2, and let's say 3 months from now they come out with FreeBSD 15. I would bootstrap Bastille Bootstrap 15.0 release and get 15. Templates is another subject that I'll do an entire video on templates, but the bootstrap process also works for templates. Here in the documentation it has about a template. A template is nothing more than a way to configure multiple jails the same way. We have well over 100 templates that you can download and use. So templates is a whole video to itself. Bootstrap is almost completed. Okay, you notice I did a Bootstrap 14.2 release. It downloads a manifest, which is a little text file. Then it downloads base.txz. Then it validates the checksum for the base.txz. Then it prints on the screen for you the manifest checksum and the checksum from the download, so you can see that they match exactly. Then it extracts the release. Now if I type Bastille list release, it shows 14.2 release. So I have 14.2 that I can now build jails from. We've bootstrapped the system. So to recap, we installed Bastille, we ran setup, we edited the comp file for ZFS, and we bootstrapped the system. Now we're ready to start building jails. Let's go to Classic Standard Jail. When you create a standard jail, Bastille create a name, a release, an IP address, and then an interface. By default, all jails are thin jails. Thin jails mean that only the required files are copied into the jail. Everything else is symlinked to the base. So therefore, thin jails are small, light, and quick to build, and don't eat up a lot of disk space. If I do Bastille create, now you see the standard format. If you type Bastille in any command and hit enter, you should get a help screen. Here's the usage, which shows you the syntax of the command. Then the options. It's always Bastille, a command, then the options, always. So Bastille create, the options for create are here. Name, release, IP address, and then an interface if needed. The options, you can create a bridged interface, a bridged jail, a clone jail, a dual jail, an empty jail, a Linux jail, a static MAC address. You can tell it to not boot when you boot the system. You can do not validate a release. You can do a boot priority. I'll talk more about boot priorities here in a minute. You can create a thick jail, where the default is a thin jail. A thick jail is a thick container. They are self-contained and independent. The entire base is copied into a thick jail. There's no symlinks. So no matter what you do to the bootstrap release, it will not affect a thick jail. VNet containers attached to a virtual bridge. You can attach your jails to VLAN IDs if you have your network broken up into VLANs. On all of our commands, there's a debug which turns on verbose messages to the screen so you can figure out what's going on. And the last is an advanced option to where if you want to tweak the ZFS options for a jail. First, let's create a standard. I know I went through that fast, but we'll get into some of the ones that matter for this video a little bit more. Okay, let's create a standard jail. Create. I'm going to name this Folsom. Release 14.2-release. Then I'm going to need to give it an IP address. If you're using a standard jail, you must give it an IP address. And I don't have to give it an interface because it'll use Bastille 0. Now, if you look at Bastille 0, that 240 address that I just gave it to that jail is attached to Bastille 0. Now if I do Bastille list, it shows the jail. The one that I like to see is Bastille list all, which shows a lot more parameters. The jail ID. Every jail has a unique ID. Jail ID of this one is 2. I just booted this system. This is the first jail I've created, so its jail ID is 2. Boot is on, so if I reboot this system, it will boot Folsom up at boot time. Priority is 99. By default, all jails have a priority of 99. If you have a jail that needs to be started before other jails, you give it a number smaller than 99 and it will boot first. So if you had 4 jails that were a 99 and one that was a 95 and you rebooted the system, it would boot the 95 jail first, then the 99s. The state is it's up and running here. There's the IP address we gave it. The host name, there's the release. 14.2-release. Then the path. Unless you go into the comp file and edit something and do something unique, all Bastille jails will be in user local Bastille jails. That's where it will create a folder with a jail name and put the root file system inside of it. Remember, if you're in the jail, you cannot touch or see the host system's file system. If you're on the host, you can see, I can CD into user local Bastille jails Folsom root. I can see and edit and do things to the file system of the jail. So it's a one-way path. The host can touch the jail, but the jail can't touch the host. So we created our first jail. Now then, this is a thin jail and a standard jail. Let's create a VNet jail. Okay, -V gives me a VNet jail. Bastille create -V Alcatraz 14.2-release. So I've given it create. -V is the option. The name is Alcatraz. Release. IP address. Since I'm doing a VNet, I can do a DHCP. In the interface, I will do VTnet 0. You cannot hook a VNet jail to the loopback interface. I wanted to show you that it will not allow you to do that. So, I created Alcatraz, I created Folsom. Folsom is a standard jail. Alcatraz is a VNet jail. Notice my DHCP server gave it a .28 address. Again, user local Bastille jails, Alcatraz root. All these are all in user local Bastille jails. Now then, let's do an ifconfig and see what we got. If you do an ifconfig, you've got the VNet 0, you've got L0, You have the Bastille 0, you have a VNet bridge, we have this E-pair E0A Bastille 1, and you have bridge 1. So Bastille is automatically creating these network interfaces for you. You don't have to sit here and figure it out. Sing Sing. Now let's do Attica. Attica 14.2-release. I need to tell it DHCP. Now I need to tell it to do VTNet 0 bridge. Make sure I got this right. Create an option, a name, a release, an IP, and VTNet 0 bridge. Making sure that I had everything correct. Attica was created. Attica got a 29. Again, user local Bastille jails in Attica. Okay, if I do an IF config, now I have EA2 Attica. It created a bridged E-pair interface for this. Again, Bastille is creating all this stuff for you. You're not having to sit here and figure out and manually create them. Now let's create a thick jail. I'll create a VNet jail and thick. So capital V, capital T, 14.2 release, DHCP, VTNet bridge 0. Oop. I can't put it on a bridge. VTNet 0. That's what I meant. Now, we created 3 thin jails, 1 thick jail. We created 2 VNets, 1 bridge jail, 1 standard jail. We've created all the various types of jails. Now, I downloaded and bootstrapped 14.2 release and didn't update it. Let's update the release now. Bastille update 14.2-release. Anytime there's been patches and updates, say there's a security warning that comes out about 14.2, you do Bastille update the release and it will update and patch the release. Remember, this should not affect the thick jail. It will affect the thin jails. Now, if I do Bastille list all, notice that all 3 of the thin jails are now patched level 3. They've been patched. Notice our thick jail is still on 14.2 release with no patches. You have to go in and patch the thick jail itself. Thin jails, you patch the release, you patch the jails. Hopefully, if I wanted to bootstrap (13.5-release), I would just type that and bootstrap and it starts bootstrapping it. Again, I can have all 3 of them bootstrapped and I can build 13.5 jails and 14.2 jails both on this system. If you go back to the table of contents, there's a whole section on the networking, virtual net, on external bridges. But the commands we use bootstrap. We bootstrap the release. We use create. We created jails. We used the bridge. We used thick. We used the VNet. We ran the setup command. And that was all the commands we ran. Now, I said there are Linux jails. You can run a Linux jail. It's still considered experimental, but you can get it to work. At a later date, I'll probably do a video strictly on building a Linux jail and show that it works. If you're not familiar with jails at all, this section on networking, where it goes into a lot of detail about networking scenarios, shared interfaces. This is a very good thing for you to read. If you're an old hand at jails and networking, then this is probably going to not be good for you. But if you're new to jails, this would be a very good thing for you to read. Okay? I think that's it for this video. Hopefully this has given you a good head start into Bastille. And as always, happy computing.